I I'm happy to have gotten to a point with social media, like including TikTok, that I'm just like I'm just gonna post what I want to post. Like I'm just gonna have fun with this.
Denitzio from the band Worriers. How are you doing?
Good, great. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you for coming to the Question and Answers podcast. So yeah, Lauren Denitzio, also under the name of Worriers, which is the current project, like main band project that you've been doing. It's been really fascinating, kind of learning about your journey musically. Over the time that I've gotten to know about your band. A good friend of mine turned me on to your music about a year ago, and yeah, I've been following you on social media, and like I really love the tunes. I think it's a really great story, and like seeing where you've come and where you're going. I thought it'd be really great to have you on the podcast and talk about it a little bit. So welcome.
Yeah, thanks so much. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. So you're based in Brooklyn, correct?
I actually live in LA.
Oh, you live in LA now. Oh,
But
okay.
the band is from Brooklyn. Like that's where it started. That's where I lived for a long time. So um, to not confuse people, I
Oh, I
still
see.
do live
Yeah,
in Brooklyn, but I don't live there anymore.
got it. I must have completely missed that along the way, but you have your roots from Brooklyn,
Yeah,
correct?
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah,
And Warriors is effectively you, right?
yeah, pretty much. We've had um, like stretches of consistent lineup, and I've written with very similar people over the years. But at the end of the day, yeah, it's just sort of my thing.
Got it. And so right now the current lineup of the band is made up of yourself, and I know Mikey Erg is playing drums, correct?
Mhm.
And then who else is affiliated with the band at this point?
Well, Frank Piegaro played guitar on the last record. He's been touring with us, so he's definitely in the band. I know him from growing up in New Jersey, and he was in the Degenerics. He was in Star Fucking Hipsters for a while. So yeah, he's been in a bunch of bands, and it's great that he's joined up with us. And then our friend Nick Psillas played bass on that record. I don't think he's going to be able to tour with us as much, really, but he's been in the band for a long time. So
Got it. Yeah, I mean, as someone who has only really ever been in bands that involve, I think my cat's going crazy right now, so I apologize if there's like extra noise in the background. But you know how cats get like the zoomies after
oh
they've
yeah,
done something.
it's about that time. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, as somebody who's only ever been in bands that were like a collective kind of consciousness, I'm always kind of fascinated to know. So, you started this project really as your own vehicle for your own music, and I know that you'd been in previous bands before, correct?
Yeah. I had been in a band before that was like you said, but very much like a collective consciousness for a band. Yeah.
Now, did Warriors kind of come out of a specific um like space where it's like you just didn't want to go down that path specifically, or is it just more like organically this just like made sense to do it this way?
Um, in the end, it just made sense to do it this way. Warrior started like as a side project with other people that were going to be writing and more consistent in it. But it sort of changed before we really started recording. That it just made sense to have it be my project, especially when touring is a lot. It takes a lot of time, and not everyone can do it all the time or wants to do it all the time, and it's easier to kind of take that pressure off of people, I think. So so yeah, it's been fun because I do collaborate with people. I'm not one of those people that like writes every note and then people just play it for me. So it's definitely really collaborative, but yeah, it's taken the pressure off of people to have that level of commitment to it.
Sure. And, I'd be curious to know from your point of view, what are some of the maybe benefits to that versus potentially like some of the unfortunate side effects of having to kind of be like the person who leads the ship, so to speak. I mean, because every band I think typically does have that person just by default anyway. But in this case, this is really your main vehicle, even though you are collaborating. So there's obviously going to be positives and negatives to it. And I guess just for people who may not fully, I guess, understand what that looks like from your point of view, like if you could just kind of talk about that a little bit.
Sure. I mean, I think everyone has their own way of collaborating and their own way of writing songs. Like some people, you know, can write and play everything and really know exactly what they want and know exactly what sound they want, and need to be really specific about that. Some people just like writing kind of the bones of the song and like fleshing it out with other people like from beginning to end. So I feel like after having been in a band where it operated in one very specific way with everyone kind of having a say and everyone really being invested in how it sounds, obviously like not everyone's going to agree all the time, and I just felt like if I was going to write and record and tour and really have the band be something significant in my life, it was going to work best for me to not have to kind of like get the thumbs up from everybody all the time and like always having to agree on everything and always having things be democratic, because it makes friendships really hard too. I mean, yeah, it's like no matter who you are as a friend is probably different than you are as a bandmate, and I feel like it's ended up being a lot more fun when you know we write and record and it's been a lot of the same people on tour, but people don't feel the pressure to like necessarily go on every tour or play every show, and we can just everybody does their own thing, like especially Mikey when he's in other bands, like he gets other tours, he gets other shows, and we've had fill-ins and it's fine, whereas other bands, if you have to make sure everyone's available, that can really stop you from doing things a lot of the time. And I knew that was going to be an issue if I didn't just put it up front, like, hey, we're gonna get a fill in. I'm not gonna not do a tour, and then ask people to not do the projects that they want to do. So
Right.
that's probably.
Yeah, and well, and particularly like you mentioned Mikey Erg, as being like a key player. Because correct me if I'm wrong, but you've worked with Mikey in previous projects before, right?
Yeah, he was in the other band that I was in. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, right. But Mikey Erg is involved in a million projects all the time, so I'm sure that with this dynamic, it frees him to be able to explore that territory more often. So it's like a win-win, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's been really interesting because I have been playing music with Mikey for so long that he is definitely a member of the band, and certainly like I've been lucky that he prioritizes Worriers in certain ways. But yeah, but it is the thing, like especially with his solo tours and things, or like playing solo shows, it's he doesn't have to pick one. So yeah.
Right. Yeah, I know that it can be kind of a touchy subject because there is like an ego element when you're in a collaborative consciousness, like a band, right?
Yeah.
Where it's like, oh well, but without me, it's not really the band, and it's like, well, not really, It's, I mean, and I only say that with a certain level of jest, where it's like, well, of course, it's not the same without you, but at the same time, I think within the case of like this, where it's Lauren Denitzio's, or Denitzio's kind of project, it's your songs, but you are asking for collaboration. But at the end of the day, if Mikey Erg does have something else going on, it's like, okay, well, hey, we have the freedom to move on without you, if that's okay, and no hard feelings, are involved. And it
Yeah.
seems like such a more like mature way to go about it. Yeah.
For sure. And I think that is a big part of it, that you know, at a certain point when we weren't, you know, kids just sort of winging it and not having anything better to do, or when you establish other relationships in your life or other work and other just other things, it makes it can make a lot more sense.
Right. Now you mentioned you grew up in New Jersey area, right?
I did, yeah.
Yeah, and like New Jersey is just like you know, I'm not very familiar with that area. I'm a West Coast California kid, you know, born and raised, never lived anywhere outside of California. But I know that it's kind of a storied place, it was, especially within like the punk rock scene, because I mean, obviously it's like close to New York, depending on like where you live, but you're also close to Philly, you know, you're close to DC, and like there was all this stuff happening. So it seems like Jersey was kind of like wedged right in the center of like all of that, right? I'd love to know a little bit about like your experience, you know, as a young person growing up in the scene, and like I don't know, like what really brought you into like the punk rock world. Yeah.
Well, I guess really I was just lucky that, I mean, I grew up in central Jersey and was, you know, 45 minutes away from New York, about like an hour and a half from Philly. And at that point, New Jersey really had a really strong DIY scene. And I mean, honestly, like I just haven't lived there in a long time, so I don't know what it's like there now. But when I was in high school, I mean, I could go to 3 shows a week, or even more than that if I was allowed to, you know. And you know, everything was mostly within like a half hour of my house, and like you didn't have to drive 2 hours to the big city to see bands. And yeah, maybe I went to New York to see folks who would play like Roseland or something, but all the like smaller medium-sized touring bands played New Jersey. And um so it was just nice to have that access and to have a lot of other kids that like played in bands and set up shows. Like I set up shows in high school. So so yeah, there were just that access there. And I think because it helped that it was between all of those cities, and that it was a good tour stop for a lot of people. And um but yeah, it was a really I'm really lucky that I that I grew up in that area to be able to see that side of like being in a band and making music.
Sure. So you mentioned that you would set up shows. Like, are there any shows like looking back that you were like really, I guess, proud of having played a part in?
I mean, I it's like I didn't set up that many shows. I think I only set up like 2 or 3 or something when I was in high school. But I remember I did a benefit show for like the Rainforest Foundation
Hmm.
or something, and it was there was a ska band Day 19
Hmm.
that that was like a big deal to me, and like I think they got back together to play it.
Hmm.
And then there was this band Westbound Train. It was all ska stuff. It was all ska punk stuff.
Okay.
That they were bands that I saw all the time when I was younger. That then by the time I was a senior in high school, I was like, wouldn't it be cool if like I just asked them to play a show, and then they played a show, you know, like, and it was um like for that point, it was a really good lineup, and it was cool to be able to make that happen when I was a teenager. So
Nice. Were you playing in bands back in high school?
no. Mm-mm.
No. You're strictly a fan. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I was playing guitar in high school, but I wasn't. And I was writing music, but I wasn't. Yeah, I wasn't trying to be in a band in high school.
At what point did you start actually releasing music and start playing shows?
Well, I started being in a band I think when I was 19,
Hmm.
and we started releasing stuff within a couple years of that.
Hmm.
And it was definitely by accident, you know. It was definitely like, oh, we're in a band. This is just fun, and maybe we'll play for the summer or something. And then we just liked it a lot, and our friends were putting us on shows, and so we're like, I think people like this. Like we should probably keep doing this, and it turned into a band that put out kind of a lot of music. um, but yeah, it wasn't until I was 19, and some friends were like, "Hey, like you play music, we play music, like let's play together." But
Yeah, yeah. It just kind of feels organic at that point. And it's just like, yeah, it just feels natural. Yeah, that's cool. Um, but so Worriers released a record during the pandemic, and obviously, what are you supposed to do with that? Like, well, we have this record, we're putting it out, but we can't really promote it the way that we would normally do it. So, tell me about what that experience was like, and like, what did the band and you and your label do to kind of help circumvent the fact that there was no shows or ways to conventionally promote it?
Yeah, I mean, we it was just unfortunate because it was one of those situations where we had all those tours lined up, and then you think that it's gonna like you think that it's just gonna get pushed 6 months or something, and and then a year later, still not really back in the game. And I think, like, with that in mind, we didn't know what to change, like we didn't know what to compensate for, really. So yeah, it's like I did a lot of live streams. We promoted things as best we could remotely. Since we don't all live in the same place, we couldn't even be one of those bands that like records a live session together, or in the same room and all. So yeah, it was hard. I was just glad that we released some of the songs before it came out. People were kind of aware that was happening, but yeah, it was just a really big bummer not be on tour when all that was happening. But
Yeah, that is an unfortunate byproduct of being a band that in terms of logistically you're not close in proximity, right? Like I play in Tsunami Bomb, and like we have that similar type of situation where even when there isn't a pandemic going on, it's extremely challenging for us to be in the same room and do anything like that. So when we like get asked to do like either like a podcast or something like that, it's like, well, I mean, who do you want? Like, because we can only get you one or two people, and like, we got to make that all work. But I think that's just also a byproduct of just getting older, and like everyone's lives change, and like, families and people move and like all that stuff. But yeah, because you mentioned doing some live streams and stuff, and I think the jury's still out as to whether or not that's something that will either continue to be done, because we now know that it can be done, and it can be done, I mean, pretty well. I mean, you can get decent audio and good video aligned, and they have new ways to kind of add interactive elements. I mean, do you personally think that that's something that you'll try to incorporate as a like a secondary measure to live shows, even though live shows are starting to come back?
I mean, I wouldn't mind doing that, um, but it is something that to do it well takes a lot of effort, and I really enjoy I do enjoy watching bands do live sets where, it's good audio, they're good video, like, things are well planned and stuff, and I think that that's great, and I hope that keeps going. But I also know that like that it takes so much to do that, and I'd rather be on tour. Like
Totally.
I'd rather play a couple live shows to like a smaller group of people than put it on the internet. I'm also really self conscious about live sets being recorded, um, so maybe I'm not the best person for that. But I hope other bands keep doing it. I hope other bands keep doing it.
Well, sure, and I'm confident that will be something that a lot of bands will adapt into their repertoire, so to speak. I mean, there's a lot of bands that are just road dogs, and that's what they do, and that they're not going to change, but they really don't have a reason to, because that's just they have the mechanisms in place to allow for that to happen.
Right.
And I mean, I know that you've kind of touched on it a little bit, because I follow you on TikTok, and I following you on Instagram, and I know that you've mentioned something. Like I saw one of the TikToks, it was just like oh man, like when I look at like my touring schedule, it's like, oh Lord, like that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't necessarily expect for you to give up the ghost, but is that safe to assume then that you have a lot of plans in place for tours coming up?
Yeah, yeah. It's like uh, it, it's a bummer to me that I can't say what they are because I'm so excited.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we have a lot of touring planned, and it'll happen. Some of it will probably be announced soon, and but yeah, I think that's also part of it. Like I'm realizing how much there is to do before we go back on tour, and I'm like, oh no,
Yeah.
but yeah, we do.
Yeah. Do you have any, I guess, for lack of a better word, like fears about stepping back into the touring world. I'm not even relating this to like COVID or the pandemic. It's just more like just in general touring, because touring it's a fun yet chaotic process, you know. And so there's all this stuff that goes into it. And so I'd be curious where your mind's at with that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really excited for it. I think I need to work out before we go back on tour because I think it's more physically draining than I even think it is. But yeah, I'm not really scared just because I'm so psyched, and I feel really lucky that we'll be in spaces with people I know and I like and I trust, and um, you know, I'm hoping that that'll just like fall right back into it. Um, so yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, I know that I'm definitely very eager to get back on the road when we can, because at this point I feel like, you know, if you're vaccinated and if you've been following the protocols and if you're a relatively healthy person, like you probably don't have a lot to necessarily worry about beyond just like the general like, okay, well, as long as we adhere to, you know, good hygiene, you know, then we're probably okay, you know.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's like I'm
yeah,
bringing my own microphone.
totally. Yeah.
I did before the pandemic, and yeah, it's like everybody just needs to get vaccinated. I really just hope everyone uh, who goes to shows will get vaccinated and you know be chill about it. So
Yeah, I mean, we can only hope at this point, because I think trying to, you know, screaming at the wall anymore, just, you know, it's not going to really do any good anymore, you know. So
yeah.
yeah. But you know, so I know that we kind of touched on it a little bit before we got on the air, but so you run a weekly newsletter,
Hmm.
and that's become kind of a main, what it sounds like, part of your communication with your audience and your fans. I mean, tell me about like where that's kind of came from. Like, what is it that you use it for, and like has that, you know, evolved over the time that you've been doing it?
Sure. Well, I mean, I've been sending out the newsletter called Get It Together for a couple years now. So you know, pre-pandemic and all of that, it was already something I was sending out once a week, and it really came out of the fact that um, I was writing a newsletter for Worriers and then also for my visual art practice, and they're very separate things, and it it just felt like too much. Like I wanted to be able to bring them together and not have it just be about announcements, you know, or like not just be about our plans. So um and I'd done a lot of interviews for other publications and things like that I wanted to have my own outlet for it. So yeah, a couple of years ago I started sending out the weekly newsletter that is like my thoughts on things, and you know, and also like advance notice for Warrior stuff or like art sales and things like that. Um, and and then when it became an option to have that kind of thing have a paid subscription, I added that. So it's a free weekly newsletter that I have interviews about once a month, and you know, we just had a guest post a couple weeks ago, and but then for paid subscribers, there's like I do like process videos. I've done like solo versions and you know, covers and stuff that I'll send out. Other like how-to posts and like definitely advance notice and like discounts on things, and a zine series, like a zine and flexi series, um, that goes out 4 times a year, and it's really just like four like physical things, like things that I make that go to a group of people who subscribe. So it's been a really fun project where kind of everything that I make just sort of gets mushed together, and like you don't even necessarily have to be a fan of Warriors or my art to enjoy it, I think. But then the paid subscription thing is very much like a Patreon.
Hmm. Okay.
But yeah.
Yeah, the Patreon vehicle is something that it seems like, you know, a lot of creators, you know, creators that are within the music space or even outside the music space are really adopting as, you know, part of what they do to, make money, really,
Mhm.
so that they can continue to go on and do these things that they want to do in creative spaces. And I'm glad that you brought it up, because I did want to touch on this. So you are a visual artist as well, and you do a bunch of graphic design. You make like other types of art. I mean, is that something that you just had your hand in forever, essentially, or? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I've been drawing and painting and things since I was a kid, and I went to school for illustration, and I've been working on both illustration projects and my own artwork for a long time, but definitely like kind of parallel to Worriers, and it's felt nice over the past year or two to try to bring those together a bit more. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the separation between the audio art and the visual art, um I don't know. I mean, like, the line is there, obviously, just because of, by the vehicle in which those are. But um I remember you did pose the question on TikTok about, like, hey, should I use this to talk about my art and my music? And I think most people said, no, just you do them both here. Like, it's fine, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, people definitely responded to that with, yeah, just put it all in one. I don't believe them. I'm gonna give it a shot, but like I don't believe I don't think that um the same folks who want to know about music stuff or like see me making funny videos are also going to want to watch like drawing process videos. It's just like not the same, not always the same person, but but yeah, it's just like I like making videos and things, and we'll just we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to spend too much time on this, but I'm like, TikTok is so wild, man. Like,
Yeah.
it's just a completely bonkers, like, place to be, right? And it feels like you're really adapting to it. Like, I've noticed the one video you did with your dog, like, it blew up.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
it went all
Uh-huh.
crazy, but then you put something out there that, like, you really like, is meaningful, and it's like more like reflective to you, and it's like, 2 views or something like that, and
Yeah,
it's just like,
yeah.
it stinks, like, what are you supposed to do with that? I mean, I don't know, what do you think about, like, the way that artists kind of have to use these mechanisms, like social media? Because the newsletter, much like an emailing list, right? Like an old emailing list, or like even like a conventional blog, right? Like, that's something that is much more personal and is pointed at people that have told you that they want to get this information from you, right? So they're kind of like the tried and true standbys in terms of, this is my core audience that I know is there. But then social media and, like, these mechanisms for, like, getting your stuff out there to new people, it's really just become a pay to play thing.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I that really is a big part of why I have the newsletter, because it's not determined by an algorithm. Like, I send out the email, and for the most part, you receive the email. And like, yeah, you can choose whether or not you just delete it, but um, yeah, it's the people who have said no. I want to hear from you, and that's what I try to make be a more personal thing. That's I feel like that feels like the most authentic version of me and of the band and of my art. But I I'm happy to have gotten to a point with social media, like including TikTok, that I'm just like, I'm just gonna post what I want to post. Like, I'm just gonna have fun with this. And yeah, there's certain things that like you need to promote when you have a new record or you're going on tour or whatever, and it helps to have those things, like it helps to reach as many people as possible. But you can't, yeah, it's like I'm past getting hung up on like how many followers we have, or like if people like it, or like likes and follows or whatever. Like, I don't, I mean, obviously I care a little bit. Like, you can't say you don't care at all, but it's like I know that that's not really a good measure of much.
Right, because the social currency thing is really easy to get hung up on.
Mhm.
with respect to likes having value and shares and all that stuff. And I think in particular, at least this is my humble opinion, over this last year and a half, when we were all locked inside, we couldn't go anywhere, we couldn't have concerts. And like for musicians and like touring bands, that's what we crave. Like that's what we really want, is we want the audience to come to the shows, right?
Yeah.
Like the likes on social media, it's like who fucking cares, dude? I mean, it matters to a degree, but really I think that it's really wise of you to have, for what it's worth, I mean, take my opinion for what it's worth, but like I think it's really wise that you've made that a priority with like your newsletter, and like making sure that you're still connecting with the people that are asking you for it versus the ones who are more passive, because chasing these likes and like chasing these comments and stuff, it just feels kind of dirty.
Yeah, yeah, and it's all something that can change in a heartbeat, you know? It's like they change the algorithm and then half the people don't see your posts anymore, you know? And it's like you can't, no matter who you are, if you're using social media for your business or your project, and like you just can't depend on it. Like that
Mhm.
can't be the only way you communicate with people. So so yeah, and it feels like icky to try to chase that and like, bend to their whim is like not, I don't know, it's just not fun.
Right, right. Well, getting back to the music, you did a EP of covers that you also released over the course of the pandemic. One of those songs ended up on a compilation record that Sell the Heart and Lava Socks did with the Rancid tribute, which again, awesome, loved it. One of my favorites. I mean, personally, it's one of my favorites off the album. So no offense to any of the other bands on the record, because I think it's top to bottom a really great tribute. But the five songs that you picked, like, I don't know, tell me, why did you pick those songs?
um it's funny because the EP wasn't like we didn't record it thinking like these five songs should be on a covers EP. It was um over the course of quarantine, we were asked to, do a cover for different projects that were pretty specific.
Hmm.
So, it's like the Rancid cover was for a Rancid tribute comp. The Tom Petty cover was for a Tom Petty like birthday celebration stream, and um, you know, the new Pornographers cover was for Stereo Gum, and we had to pick a song from a specific decade, and so when I saw the range of the songs, that I just thought it was fun, that we had done all of these, and it would be really, I thought it would just be a shame if like the only people who ever heard it were like the people who watched the Tom Petty live stream,
Hmm.
like I wanted to be able um, to preserve those in a way. So yeah, I mean that's how we picked them, I guess. But yeah, it was definitely an exercise in like home recording. Like, I had other people mix the songs, but we recorded it ourselves. I sang all of that in my closet. Like it's not it wasn't a highly produced preconceived thing really.
Sure. Well, yeah, I think that over the course of this year and a half, it has been an interesting journey for musicians, because some do have access to like decent home recording equipment. Some of them have access to like full on studios, and then others don't have any of that. And like, what are you left with? And with like, I know Tsunami Bomb, we managed to record a few things on our own as well. And some of us have better recording equipment than others, and we had to kind of figure it out, and like we managed to make it work okay. But it was an interesting kind of experience, like having to really shift your mind into that process, because you want to make it as good as you possibly can. And if you're used to it being like super high professional grade, whatever it is that you're used to doing, and now you're just having to make do, like, I don't know. I think there's like a certain level of humility that comes with it. It's like, yeah, we're just going to strip it down, like keep it simple, and the song is the song. The song will be what the song will be. But I mean, I really enjoyed like listening to those covers. And do you think that that's something that you'd like to do again, like in the future?
Sort of. I mean, I really love playing covers. It's just fun. So I'm sure we'll do something like that again. I need a break because I mean we did a lot of other covers too. That I just like, okay, no more. I can't. But but yeah, I'm sure we will. Like
Mhm.
I've done cover bands at Fest and things, and so I yeah that'll definitely continue to be a Warriors thing.
Mhm. What is your next show coming up?
I'm playing a solo show
Mm.
in San Diego with Come Closer and Slow Death and Mikey Erg actually.
No.
Yeah, in San Diego at the Casbah. So that's my like quote unquote first show. I feel like playing solo is uh, not the first I'm most worried about.
Mm.
um, but yeah, we have some stuff to announce that'll be like our first shows back, and I'm yeah, it's gonna be a lot of fun. I'm just so psyched.
Nice. And then I can't remember if I actually discovered this or not, but you actually do kind of offer your services for graphic design to people if they want to like have like logos done and all that stuff, right?
Sure. I mean, I don't really uh I do have graphic design experience, but
Mm.
I don't necessarily focus on that as like commissioned work. I'm more like at this point I'm more of an illustrator.
Mm.
So I definitely do a lot of like cover art and I'll do portraits for people and editorial illustration. So like when people need visuals for a project, I'm all about it. So yeah.
Got it. Got it. But I mean, it sounds like you've essentially been able to leverage your work in both music and in art, and essentially made your own career path with it, right?
Yeah.
Like, yeah,
No, absolutely. I uh still do some other stuff on the side, but it's yeah, it's been really nice to be able to maintain both sides creatively.
yeah,
Like found that to be sustainable for sure.
yeah. I mean, it's like the dream, for most people to like essentially just work for yourself and like have that be something that you can just kind of ebb and flow, however you'd like it to go.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, for sure.
I mean, congratulations. That's awesome. I there was a question that I wanted to. I know I'm kind of bouncing around here, but you've worked with some pretty awesome producers with some of these records. I mean, you had Laura Jane Grace on one of them,
Mhm.
and I mean that must have been a pretty awesome experience. I mean, I'm a huge Against Me fan. I mean, I love everything that Laura has done. I love Against Me. I love her solo projects. I think she's just an incredible songwriter, and I think she totally understands like what makes a great song. And reflecting back on those times, like I mean, working with producers like that, I mean, has it really like helped you grow like in that respect?
Absolutely. Yeah, because I mean, I uh, we've worked with producers, and it's been based on like my knowing their work, knowing that we're on the same page about things, but also that they are just more experienced than me. And I'm not a recording engineer. I like there's my knowledge only goes so far, and being able to have someone contribute. Like I haven't really like fully co-written songs with producers necessarily, but they definitely have input. Laura definitely helped us work on songs and like from a songwriting standpoint, and came up with things that I wouldn't have thought of. And yeah, and at the end of the day, I even now like I totally find myself calling back to things that she mentioned, and or that Mark, the engineer for that record, taught us. So so yeah, and that's the thing. It's like that's great. I want to do that. I want to keep doing that.
Yeah, there's a certain level of value that I think a lot of bands sometimes miss out on by going that step and paying the money to hire somebody who has been through the ringer and like really understands these processes a little bit more. Because I mean, let's face it, I mean, I'm not expecting for you to like talk about how much it costs or like whatever, but it can be expensive.
Huh?
Yeah.
Yes.
And but there is like a reward that comes from that where it's like, man, we learned so much, or like, man, like we thought about things that we just didn't really ever consider. And I mean, that's got to be priceless to a degree. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I will say I as much as I would tell folks that like if you have the opportunity to work with somebody that you really admire and that you think would really mesh well with your music, like go for it. But at the same time, like you don't need it. You know, like we've made a record without a producer, and I feel like you, especially because it is expensive. You know, like but I don't. Um, yeah, it's like I just definitely encourage people to still try to do things on their own if that's what you have access to. Like you can figure out all those things yourself. You can spend a couple weeks just watching YouTube videos where like there are interviews with producers and there are like you know recording engineers giving you tutorials on how to do things. Like that's how I've learned how to record our own music and record demos. Like there's so much you can do yourself that like you know if you don't have access to that, if it's not accessible to you, it's like that doesn't matter. But uh, I'm definitely psyched that the people that I never thought I'd work with are people that I've been able to collaborate with.
For sure. And that's kind of the beauty about music and art in general, is that there really is no rules. Like I mean, I've mentioned this a few times on the podcast. It's like you literally can do what anything you want, and as long as it's outside of like being offensive or illegal, just go with it, like you know and even offensive is like relative to a degree, but at the same time it's like let's not bite off more than we can chew, so um but no, I'm stoked to hear about like what's going to be coming down the road for you. I'm very excited that you're going to be able to get back on the road soon. So I appreciate you filling me in on a lot of this information. So there's a couple of questions that I like to throw out to every guest, and I gave you a little bit of a heads up, so I'm very eager to hear what you have to say. But first one is, who are some artists that you just really feel need to be on people's radar right now?
Um, cool. That one. I feel like these are artists that are probably on a lot of people's radar, but also like not necessarily on like my friends' radar, you know? I was gonna say Deep Sea Diver,
Mm.
that they put out a record a little while ago that I really like and just hadn't heard of them before, and I was like, wait, what? Like the great band. Super kind of like angular guitar stuff, very much like for fans of Sleater Kinney and stuff like
Mhm.
that. Um, then Middle Kids
Hmm.
from Australia. They're an indie band that they have some really great songs, and I don't know if they've toured here or not, or like if they're going to anytime soon. But I really like their music, and then also Jenny O,
Hmm.
who's like another person that I feel like she's popular in LA but doesn't like to tour a lot. Like I don't think she tours very much. Um, but really sweet indie kind of soul-y singer-songwriter, and I really love her. I really love her music, and I just want everybody to listen to her. Yeah. So those I would say those three.
Deep Sea Diver is a band that I got turned on to a few years ago, and I'm right there with you. Like, just a very, very good band. Like, last couple of albums have been very awesome. Like, everyone should be listening to that band. A person who is an old friend of mine who is from Seattle knows them, and apparently they got like best artist in Seattle or something like that, or like they've had like the
Wow.
number one selling independent record in Seattle like this last year. So
Mhm.
and they deserve it. Like, they're very good. So I'm
Totally.
glad you brought them up.
Cool.
Um, and yeah, so the last question I like to throw out to everyone, and I know people either love this or hate this, but if you can only pick 5 records to listen to for the rest of your life, like if you were trapped on an island with them, what would they be?
Um, cool. I wrote them down because I kind of gave up agonizing over it. I was like, it's fine. Um, but yeah, and I tried to um, not list records that I've listened to like a million times. Um, but I guess first one is Nico Case, Fox Confessor Brings the Flood. Love that one. The Weaker Than's Reconstruction Site. uh, this seems cheesy, but Bruce Springsteen, Born in the USA.
The boss, yeah.
Good vibes.
Yeah.
Magnetic Fields, Get Lost.
Mm.
I really like Stephen Merritt's songwriting, but that I could have said 69 Love Songs and then had a lot more music to listen to, but I like Get Lost. And then Block Party, Silent Alarm.
Ooh, yeah. Yeah.
I saw them perform that record in full on my birthday a couple years ago, and it was awesome.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah, they kind of it seemed like they kind of disappeared like rather abruptly. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know the story behind that at all, but yeah, they I feel like they didn't put out a record for a while, and then they came back with a much more like synth pop dancey thing. That was cool, but definitely like a lot different than Silent Alarm. So I was glad that they at least did a tour where.
Yeah, well, and I think too that with some of the bands from like the UK and Europe too, it can be kind of like kind of an illusion where like they didn't really go anywhere. They just didn't really pop in the US, you know, like
Yeah.
like they did for this album, but then like the next thing like didn't really hit very well. So it's like we didn't hear about it, you know.
Yeah.
Like there's this really great band that are you familiar with Editors?
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I was backpacking with a friend in Europe back in like 2000 and what year was that? It was like 2007 or 8 or something like that. And we got to see them at this festival in Germany, and we had never heard of them, you know, and we were just, this is awesome. Like, who are these guys? And so we were like, oh, Editors, awesome. And so we kind of came back to the United States being like, we know about a band that nobody else knows about. Right. And then of course, like they kind of blew up, but then a couple of years later, it was like, we never heard about them, but lo and behold, this whole time they've been huge in England and in Europe still. So they're just,
didn't know that, but that's awesome.
yeah, no, Editors are awesome. Yeah, they're great. But yeah, Lauren, I really appreciate your time. And you know, I'm again like congratulations on all of the success for Worriers and with your art. And you know, I actually am waiting for your record to be sent for me. I just ordered it the other day, so I'm excited. But yeah, thank you so much for making the time, and hopefully we'll catch a show soon.
Great. Awesome. Yeah, thanks.
Take care.